Shalom Israel. All praises, honor, and glory go to Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahweh Shai for allowing me to do another lesson. Yahweh being who the world ignorantly calls God. Yahweh Shai being his son, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. And there is no God beside them. Double honors to the elder apostles and the elder bishops of Great Millstone for being faithful witnesses to the Holy Spirit. Salutations to the elect, whom the Lord hath given ears to hear. And I wanted to land back off of a point that was made by the brother GMS Adawan Hawad. It says, study, examine thyself, and grow. And the brother made a good point. You know, it's a very edifying lesson. And I just wanted to land back off a point that was made in which he was speaking on how we are God's husbandtry. And that goes back to 1 Corinthians 3:16. So I typed in the chat, what is husbandry? Now, the word husband goes into the word planter. So it says husbandry means the careful management, cultivation, and care of living resources, especially animals and land. In animal husbandry, breeding, feeding, raising, and caring for livestock. You know, not spiritual as the men of the Lord, before they were called to be servants of the Lord, they were actually shepherds of flocks. And like, what is that, Amos the 7th chapter? How Amos was speaking on how before he was called, he was a shepherd. King David, you know, he was a shepherd. Who else? I believe Elijah. You know, so they had carnal jobs, but in the spirit, you know, they would, you know, it just comes to mind, you know, as I think about the animal husbandry. So it says, examples: cattle, sheep, poultry, goats, includes health, shelter, reproduction, and productivity. Land, agricultural husbandry. And, you know, I would imagine in the ancient world that an animal husbandry was a common job, you know, land and agricultural husbandry as well, which is why, you know, Yahweh Shai often used to his disciples and his followers, he often used you know, agricultural metaphors to explain his teachings. And it says broader figurative meaning: stewardship or careful management of resources. So it says the word origin comes from the Old Norse husbandi, meaning master of a household, originally referred to managing a household's resources, not marriage. Husbandry equals responsible care, management, and stewardship. And as the brother had brought out, you know, this is why we got to be on our P's and Q's, because even if, let's say, you know, you're a soldier in a camp, you're not necessarily the head or first, second, or third in command. You know, Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahweh Shai, we don't know how he's going to use us in these last days. You know, Isaiah 4:1 could be for you, but, you know, we have to grow. Right? That's pretty much what the brother was saying. And us, as far as us studying, examining ourselves, and growing. So it says, so it asked me if you encountered this word in the Bible, farming, economics, or symbolism. Tell me the context and I'll explain how it's being used there. So of course, I wanted to know as far as the Apostle Paul's interpretation of calling or his interpretation of 1 Corinthians 3:16. Paul does use the idea of husbandry to describe believers, especially to explain how God works through them and what their role is. All right, 1 Corinthians 3:9, Salakia. For we are laborers together with God. Ye are God's husbandry, ye are God's building. The Greek word Paul is georgion, which means a cultivated field, farmland that is worked, cared for, and expected to produce fruit. Okay? So, being that farmland that the Lord has given a word to, has given us understanding, we're expected to pass that knowledge on to others. That's the producing fruit. So Paul is saying believers are God's cultivated field. Right? It reminds me of the precept. Sirach 26:20. When thou hast gotten a fruitful possession throughout all the field, sow it with thy own seed, trusting in the goodness of thy stock. So the hopeful elect, we've been sown with the seed of faith, the seed of Yahushua, the seed of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, and essentially the seed of the Holy Spirit. Okay? And as much as the Lord has given us, we ought to give it to the believers. So Paul is saying believers are God's cultivated field. God is the owner and master cultivator. Apostles and teachers are workers, not owners. Growth and fruit come from God, not from human effort alone. The spiritual picture Paul is painting, Paul is addressing division in the church. He uses agriculture to humble everyone. One plants, another waters. God gives the increase. What this says about believers, when Paul calls believers God's husbandry, he is saying you are not self-owned. You are intentionally cultivated. You are expected to bear fruit, character, obedience, and good works. You grow in season, not instantly. You require care, pruning, and patience. This connects directly to John 15, Galatians 5:22, and Matthew 13. Read this. This pretty decent. You're God's husbandry. You're God's building. Okay? So again, husbandry going into organic growth, life, fruit, and season, and building, meaning structure, order, foundation. Right? So it's on point as far as chat was saying how we are built by the Lord. Right? God gave the increase. Now it says together they show the church is alive, not mechanical, and growth must be rooted in Hamashiach, not personalities. Yeah, man. So that was pretty much it. And we ought to be giving thanks and praise. Yeah, we go through what we go through, as the Lord is constantly plucking the weeds from his garden. things that have sown themselves within us, through our bad habits, through growing up in this world. The Lord is plucking that out of us, and it's hurting. But at the same time, we ought to be grateful that the Lord chose to tend to us. This is the Lord's work, man. We got to beautify him. Okay? So that's pretty much it, man. I said it was something I was, I found very edifying. The brother does edifying videos, But I'll leave it at that. Till next time, shalom.